don't want to waste too much time on that. If you can hear me, I'm rolling. I've got a lot to share with you today. First off, we're going to talk about this little beautiful lady again, simply because last week it didn't show up so well. We're going to talk about chain stitching. Did you know it's National Serging Month? Really? Who came up with that, right? Okay, National Serging Month. Yes, that's what it is. And let's see, what else do we have on here? A book review. But the most important is we are going to talk about buying the right size. Buying the right size clothing and buying the right size pattern because they're all intermingled. Yes, yes. All right, so you guys can hear me loud and clear. I have my new mic. Yes, I look like a little roadie. And I have another mic here, so we've got double. It's the whole camera thing that is messing me up. I'll get this figured out one of these days. But I'm just trying to make it a little bit better so we're not crossed. All right. I see you all on here. You tell me I can hear loud and clear. Awesome. And I know so many of you are on spring break, which I'm a little jealous about because I woke up to snow today. Yes, snow. Did we not win? Win walked out this morning to go get something, and he came back, and he's like, you know, it's pretty miserable out here. And if he says it's miserable, that means it's miserable. All right, so got my handy-dandy coffee. First of all, before I get rolling, while everybody's rolling back in, this is the top last week that I had so many questions about. There's a full blog post about this. This is an upcycle project. This is too old, but I know you couldn't see it very well last week. So I'm going to bring this little lady up. And this is the only recap from last week that I'm going to do. I will go back and sew that minky fabric another time for you, but I wanted to move on to serging. So this is it. Remember, this was the black turtleneck. And this is sheer fabric. This has, what do you call it? Like little gold. It's almost like a heat fabric. It's not scratchy on the skin. Has a little bit of stretch, but all tulle has a little bit of stretch. I did French seams, and I basically just cut the tank top. I cut the arms off, cut this out, and cut this out. And I showed you this last week, but I know it was like super pixelated. And I left the top edge raw. That's where the conversation started. Some people said they didn't like it raw. Some people loved it raw. Some people wanted to know why I left it raw. Is it going to get nasty? Well, this fabric doesn't fray. It doesn't fray at all. Now you have to back stitch on your seam, and it looks like, let me see here. You can see how that's not even at where the seam is. There. Now it is. How easy is that? Okay, so you have to backstitch at the end of each seam. Otherwise, it's going to come unraveled. But that has nothing to do with your fabric unraveling. That's just your seam. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. If you wanted to add a binding there, that's totally fine. In fact, I could see one thing that would be really cool is a fold-over elastic. That would look really good. A bias binding, which I can give you some tips in the book I'm going to talk to you about. So there's the top. Feel free to post questions about that. Last week I know you couldn't see it well, and that's when I realized I was a pixelated mess on here. All right, so let's talk about sizing. This is a big, big, big thing. This is a big conversation. I don't care if you sew or you don't sew. This is a big thing, and the reason being is that there is no universal sizing in the United States. In Europe there is, and in a few other places there is, but in the United States there is not. Have you ever, and I am not just talking about patterns, but this ties in with sewing. So this is sewing, this is when you go shopping. In fact, I went shopping this weekend because Nordstrom had their 25% off Nordstrom Rack sale. I found, yes, I actually bought clothes, but I bought these clothes, which I didn't bring here today because I'm washing them. I only picked out garments in the bottom clearance section for the fabric. In fact, Wynn walked up, and I'll bring this piece next week. It's a gorgeous green. I only bought pieces for the fabric because I'm going to cut them up and make new clothes. I love upcycling or recycling or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of fun, the before and after. So I found this green, Wynn, what would you call it, like a crushed velvet? I'm asking him, he's laughing because he looked at this and he's like, ooh, what is that? You can always tell by his face. He'll be like, but he won't, but he never says anything unkind unless it's really ugly. But he's like, that's an interesting skirt. And it was green crushed velvet, and it had pressed creases in it. It was very cute. I would never in a lifetime wear it as a skirt, but I'm going to cut it up and turn it into a top, which that'll make a great video and blog post for you later on. So that was one piece. And then I found a couple of really cute sweaters. huge oversized sweaters. I know that they're back in style with the 80s and stuff, but I'm saying the 80s because that's when they were in style before, because that's what I lived in when I grew up in high school. The big old sweaters and the leggings, which I can hardly believe are back, but they are. So I went to find fabrics that were beautiful fabrics that I could get for pennies on the dollar. Now, for those of you that are not allergic to cashmere, I did not buy any of the cashmere because they were still a little high priced, but I guarantee you next month they're going to be even better. So you can find cashmere sweaters that are way bigger. Just find them in a size bigger than you are, or as big as you want, because that's all fabric. Cut it up and make something new. So I passed on the cashmere, so those of you that decide to go to the Orland Park Nordstrom rack, there's a whole section there for you. All right, so let's talk about sizing. If you go to a store, you see sections of small, medium, large, extra large, plus 2X, 3X, 4X, and then you also see size 00 all the way up to whatever, 36. I think 38, 42, you name it. But does that mean that if you are a size 14, that it's going to fit in every label? I can most definitely, is that even the right terminology? Yeah. Most definitely, I will tell you, absolutely not. In fact, if there was a bookie in the room, I would be willing to bet on that. Just as good as Michigan lost the other night, I would bet you that you're not going to get every label to match. And the reason being is because everyone has their own sizing. There is a base that usually most brands will kind of use as a guide, but do you ever notice, like for example, you see these? I have printed all of these off of one of my favorite stores. Yes, of course, Nordstrom. And I'm just going to give you an example here. And what I did is I highlighted all of the size 14. All right? So, size 14 in this Blossom faux leather biker jacket. Now, see if you can keep track of this, right? So the three main measurements that you have to measure: the bust, the waist, and the hip. Okay, the bust for size 14, 43 inches, the waist is 36 inches, and the hip is 45.5 inches. All right, so can you remember those numbers just for a minute? Yeah. Here's another size 14. I'll even remind you in case you have short-term memory loss like I do occasionally. Here is Andy Warhol Foundation Dennis Hopper denim jacket. Say that fast 3 times. Size 14, again, we have for size 14, bust, 39 inches. Okay, for the lack of memory, the last brand I just told you, size 14, was 43 inches. I mean, I love math, but I'm just double checking. Yes, that would be 4 inches different. That's huge. Okay, how about the waist? Waist for size 14, 31 inches. Waist in the last example was 36. Yeah, that is 5 inches, if I'm doing my math right. 5 inches. 5 inches is 5 sizes, if you're size 10 or below, or it's 2.5 sizes, if you're above a size 14. That's a huge difference. Okay, what about the hips? 41.5 inches compared to the last example, 45.5. These are going to be 2 bomber jackets hanging next to each other on a rack, different labels, and guess what? You are talking about 2 or 3 completely different sizes, all labeled size 14. So not to bore you, but do you see I have all of these printed, and I don't think, let's see, I don't think one of these is the same. Now this brand only goes up to a size 10. This brand, let's see what we have here. Whoops. Okay, still not the same. Size 14, bust 40 inches, waist 32, and hip 42. Well, that's not even anywhere close to those other 2. So do you see where I'm going with this? Here's one, 40 inches, 33 inches, 43. I say that in order of bust, waist, hip. So when I hear so many of you say that you're trying to buy clothes and you are absolutely miserable at that, this is why. So if this is how it is in ready to wear, how do you think it is in patterns? Whoa, That is a whole different category, and that is because the sizing there is a whole completely different bombshell. So what I have done here, I brought all these patterns. Oh yeah, I know. And I can see a whole bunch of you typing in questions here, so I'll be sure to come back. What I'll do is I'll answer a lot of questions at the end if I miss them now, and I always go back and answer again. What I might do, though, is tomorrow I have a little bit of free time. For those of you that leave questions during the live show, I try to answer. If you leave questions later, tomorrow I'm going to try to pop in live just to answer your questions. So just a Q&A tomorrow, we'll answer your questions. So don't be shy, ask your questions, and I'll get to them eventually. Okay. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Changing subjects for 1 minute. Chris, did you just say that you're in Louisiana and you have the air conditioning on? Well, I have a sweater on. I had a jacket on. It's miserable here. So thank you for letting me think of those sunshines. All right. So what I have here, and I'm just going to move my stuff out of my desk a little bit here. I love this desk. It's huge. All right. So tell me that you're not backwards, and I'll be really happy. Just give me a little thumbs up and let me know that you can see this. That's always a good thing, because if you can't, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. All right, so I grabbed some old patterns out of the bin. Okay, I can see. Thank you, guys. I love it when you hit the smiley, the laughing one. It makes me laugh, too. So these are old patterns. Fun old patterns. I mean, these are like classic styles. So here we have McCall's. I took a couple Simplicity jackets. I mean, I love patterns, especially when I can buy them for 99 cents. And as you can tell, these have never been opened. I just buy them for the cover, kind of like I buy magazines for. All right, and of course, I had to throw mine in there. So let's just look at the big difference here. And this is a big difference. So for this Project Runway Simplicity pattern, this one as an example for you, let's see, for size 14, let's just keep the same size for that matter. Size 14. This is, now again, we'll get into the general measurements and the exact measurements in a minute, but this is the general measurements for a size 14, which is exactly what we just talked about in those garments. A bust of 36, a waist of 28, and a hip of 38. All right, let me just go back to here. Size 14 here was 39-inch bust. So a 14 in the Simplicity pattern, 36, 3 inches different. How about the waist? 31 versus a 28, and 41.5 versus a 38. Those are just general measurements. Now, if you remember, most patterns are sized much differently than ready to wear, but not all. Some of the indies, like myself, in case you don't know what that means, that's called independent pattern makers. I have my sizing compared to ready to wear. So on here, I don't have a size 14 because this is one of my tops with extra small, medium, large. There's a big difference. All right, I want to show you one more, and then I'll bring this back up and explain something to you. Here's a size 14, and this is, oh, Simplicity. That's going to be exactly the same of what we just did. And here is McCall's. Now, McCall's has their measurements up here. So here's one thing I want you to pay attention to. On many patterns, even on their website, up here is general measurements. And that means general measurements is, this is 36, 28, and 38. It's exactly the same as Simplicity for general. So I'm just going to write that down for a second so you can remember this. Size 14, we have a 36-inch bust, 28-inch waist, and 38-inch hip. Now here is the important part. Down here, and this dress is just a cute, just a cute dress. Down here is the finished garment measurements. Those are absolutely the most important. And I know I've told this story before, which I'll tell it again in a minute, but about my first pair of pants and my first jacket that I used a pattern for, which I had no idea about this. Okay, so size 14, if you follow this down, it says the measurement at the bust line is 38.5. And I'm just going to put an A here for actual so you can remember this. And the measurement at the hip line is 45. It looks like they don't have, oh, here's a measurement at the waist. Nope, they don't have a measurement at the waist. 38 and 45. Now this is what's written on the label for measurements, and this is the actual size of that pattern. So you're going to have what we call ease, 2.5 inches of ease at the bust, which, you know, that's not too bad, but that's big. What about at the hip? That's huge. That's almost like, it's almost 10 inches different. Now, it's an A-line skirt, so that might be why. But I'm going to bring you back up here now, without getting too technical. I get so many questions about this. And one of the questions I get quite often is in my jeans class on Craftsy, and someone will say, I'm a size 4 and ready to wear, will your size 4 fit me? I have no idea. And what really you should do is, no matter if you're buying a garment from off the rack, find out what brand is your favorite. You know, is it one that fits really well? I know that Levi's. I know exactly what size I wear in Levi's, and guess what? Pretty much 90% of the pairs I buy, because there's always one pair that I'm not sure what they were doing when they sewed them. Same with my husband. He wears the same size all the time. There's always one pair that might not fit the same. But if you have a brand that you use all the time, or a pattern that you use all the time, whatever size you're using, you can use over and over. But you should look at the actual measurements on the pattern. And the reason being is because that's what we call ease. If there's 2 inches extra at the bust, guess what happened? That's 2 inches extra. So I can't really show it on this, but I mean, 2 inches extra, that's kind of a looser top. Now my Delilah has a lot of extra top because it's more of a kimono style that comes down like this. So that's this top right here. Now, if you wanted that to come in a little bit more, let me just bring this down here to my hot mess of a desk. This is the Delilah, so if you can imagine, oh, that's a lovely sketch, isn't it? Looks more like Casper, the ghost. Oh my goodness, we just need a couple of feet here and a little head, and we're good to go. All right, so if you want to take this in, all you have to do is pin it on yourself and take it in as much as you need. So if you want it a little bit less in the bust area, that's how you take that in. What about if it fits great up here, but you want it tighter on the waist? You just take it in like that, just like you would. You do that to both sides. If you want it more in the waist, if you just want it in underneath the arm, that's how you would take it in. I know. Okay, so changing subjects for a minute. I'm calling this my kid moment of the week because I know many of us had Easter with our friends, family, whatever, or maybe you just had some peace and quiet time at home. So every week I find something different for my nephews or my niece that's hilarious. So this week it is the innocence and how they think. So my mom was driving in the car with two of my nephews that are just turned, well, 6 and 7. One of them just had a birthday and turned 8, and the other one's turning 7. And they pulled up next to a gas station, and my mom wasn't even, I mean, it's like, how many times do you see a billboard that says don't drink and drive? Like, all the time, right? Of course, you don't drink and drive. Like, we all know what that means. Well, a 7-year-old thinks of it a little bit differently. So Cody says to my mom, as he's opening his bottle of water and takes a big sip, well, Grandma, thank heavens you're driving. So that is your laugh for the day from an innocent 7-year-old. Yes, don't drink and drive. Although he pertained that to a bottled water, so I don't know. The way they're making we can't do anything in a car anymore, you never know. But I thought you'd think that's cute for your laugh. All right, so that is your lesson. I know, I can see all your laughs. Isn't that hilarious? I just love that. Those kids are so cute. So I just found out, by the way, that Wid, what did he say? What did he call that thing? What is Colin sending us? Flat boy? All right. So those of you that have kids in school, I need help with this one. Colin just called and told me that he's sending me a letter. And I wish I could think of what it's called. Amy, if you're on here, or Mom, let me know what this little flat flat boy is called. It's like I don't know. It's some piece of paper that's smaller than an inch. And I'm supposed to have the imagination and take him places. So I asked Colin, I take him in the hot tub, and Colin says, no, Aunt Angie, it's a piece of paper. It will melt. Okay, so I won't take him. And so I have to take him on adventures. So I don't know, are we supposed to have a car seat for this kid or what? But anyways, when I get this letter, I will share it next week. And so you can all help me with my imagination of what to do with this 1 inch tall flat boy, whatever he is. And so we called him, and he told Wynn that maybe he should, what did he tell you to do? Paint him a hat or something like that. So I'll figure out the name. And those of you that have kids in like 2nd grade, you can help me with this because this is clueless. Oh my gosh, I know. All right, so we're going to move on to the cover stitch, and then I have the book review. I see a whole bunch of your questions coming in talking about this pattern sizing. All right, so on this patterns, I will have a special Q&A for this because this is such a big topic. And the reason being is if you don't get the right size when you start, regardless if you're buying a garment, and even if you have to alter it a little bit, I can't think of one garment that I can buy that I don't have to alter. Either change the sleeve length, or change the length, or take it in the waist, or whatever. Garments off the rack don't always fit, but if you don't only have to alter them a little bit, that's okay. But if you have to alter them 4 or 5 inches, so back to that ease part. The ease is how much extra room. So when it comes to knits, there's a negative ease, meaning that you might have a 36-inch bust, and you're going to buy a top that has a 34-inch bust of actual measurement. The reason being is because it'll stretch more than an inch. I don't want to overwhelm you, so we're not going to get into the knits part. I have talked about this before, and I talk about the knits in my knits class a lot. So if you need details about that, negative ease and things like that, that's where that is. But as far as the pattern, I remember my first, my pants. I told you about the MC Hammer pants, where the crotch was down to my knees, and I mean, these were a hot mess. These pants were so atrocious. I just wish I could have saved them, because you would have loved to see them now, and I would have loved to share them. But I remember cutting out a jacket when I first started. I think it was a Vogue jacket. I loved the cover. I didn't know anything about actual measurements, so I just cut out my size. Guess how much ease was in that jacket? I am not exaggerating. I want to say 8 inches, which is like 2. Well, you have to figure there's about 2 inches in between each size when you get above a size 14. So at that time I was about a size 4, so that would have been like 6 sizes. So that would have been like me going to a store and buying a size 16. That's how huge of a difference that was. All because I didn't look at the actual measurements, because I had no idea it was even there. So if you look on a pattern, and I'll just pull this one out here. And then I'm moving on from the patterns, and we will do a Q&A tomorrow sometime. Let's see. Oh goodness, this is folded way too nicely. I am not messing this pretty piece up. If you look on the pattern, there is a circle, and I have shown this a gazillion times, so not to be overkill, it'll look like this. Or maybe right here, and then maybe in the hip area. When you see that with a bunch of numbers, that is actual measurement. So that would be the bust, that would be the waist, that would be the hip. That was so much better than ripping up my pattern. And so I have this dress form behind me. Hey, Reen, thank you for the fish. Wynn says, are you going to take the fish off that? I go, heck no, I love the fish. So when you're taking your actual measurements, you need to take them on yourself to be able to compare on there. So the full bust is the full bust. It's not below it. It's not above it. It's at the full bust. And if you have a really full bust, or you wear a padded bra or anything like that, put it on your dress form or put it on yourself before you do the measurements. Then you have your waist. For those of you that don't know, your waist is when you turn to the side and you have just a little bit of an indentation. No matter what size you are, there's an indentation in there somewhere. It might be high, it might be low, I don't know. And then the hips. I also usually will take the full tummy if I'm fitting somebody for a custom garment. And the full tummy would be, if this was the hip and this was the waist, the full tummy might be in here somewhere, but I would just measure how far down it is. And that's what you can compare to your pattern. Yeah, I know. so much to remember. But if you pick the right size, or if you're in the right genre or the right country of where you're picking the size, you have a much higher rate of success in sewing a garment. And if it's only off by maybe an inch or so, no biggie. Then you can alter it, and that's really easy to do. I did see, for those of you that are in my Craftsy class on tailoring, there's a part 1, 2, and 3, and now with the Unlimited, you can skip around to see whatever you want to see, and someone will say, I have to take in this garment 4 inches. How much is too much? Well, there really isn't a too much, except for the fact that if you're altering a top or a jacket or something in that area, if it's too big and you're trying to downsize it and your arm's eye is too big all the way around, I mean, you can take in that side seam to make it higher and smaller, but that's where you have to consider. If it's a tank top or something very easy, there's a lot more flexibility. But if you cut out a garment that's too big and it's too low, or yeah, if it's too low, or if you have a jacket where the armhole's too big or too low, that you can't do much with that. You're kind of just stuck, or make it a vest. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through here and see a couple of your questions, and then I'm going to move to the chain stitch. Pam, did you just say take you sewing in the hot tub? Okay, I got to open this up a little bit. I only got part of your... Oh, that's so funny. Something, if you travel, take a city and state sign. Oh. So should... Well, we do have a street sign. We didn't steal it, though, by the way. Somebody else stole it for us. Is that how he would say that? When Wynn and I first met, there is a street, and I don't have it, so like nobody could come after me, but somebody did take this for us and gave it to us a long time ago. I don't know where it is now. But in Mokina, which Wes, I think you live in Mokina, Wolf Road and Boyer Court. Oh yeah, so my last name used to be Boyer and Wynn's last name is Wolf. So we were a street corner way back then. That was a wedding gift from somebody. I think there's a new one up there now, so no problem. Yeah, but I like that idea. So we got to figure out what to do with this little thing. I'll bring it to you next week because Colin is writing me the letter, and they're expecting me to do this quickly. I don't know. We're going to have fun. Is this like kind of like, what's that little character at Christmas that everybody puts on their shoulders? Ooh, yeah. Amy, you said your waist doesn't go in, so sizes in ready-to-wear and patterns that match your waist are usually huge on your shoulders and hips. Amy, that is a common problem. If your waist is larger in general than your bust and your hips, it's easier to get something to fit on the very top and alter from the bust down, either with a full bust adjustment or altering the pattern a little bit on the sides to give it a little bit more room. When it comes to ready to wear, that's difficult because the seams are like that big. You can hardly let them out. So I could definitely see that. So you have to probably alter a lot of clothes, don't you, Amy? Which is fun and not so fun. It just depends. Knits are probably your best friend because there's a lot more flexibility. But when it comes to jackets, that's a difficult one. So I would like to just see hands up how many people have that same issue, because when I was doing alterations for people, that was such a common one. The full tummy or just a little bit fuller tummy compared to what it is in ready-to-wear. If you notice those measurements, they went about 10 inches difference between the bust and the waist, and then another 10 going up from the waist to the hip, which many of us aren't made like that anymore. Or it changes through time. Is that how we say that? Yeah. So you're not the only one on there. Okay, Big Four patterns recommend using the bust measurement as your high bust and not full bust. Amy, I totally do not agree with that. And the reason being is, I mean, I agree with taking that measurement and adapting it, but I don't agree with using that as your only measurement. And I have had this argument, I should say, with, well, I better not say who. There's 4 leaders that teach this at quite a few places. Some of them have retired, some of them not. I'm going to go with Connie Crawford. Her and I agree totally on how we do measurements and how we do pretty much alter pattern. I think about 99% of the way, because her and I have had conversations before. And I remember going to an expo when I first even realized that the sewing industry was out there, I'm still designing clothes and doing custom clothing for clients, and I'm just trying to find the best way to fit them. I didn't care about myself necessarily because I had my patterns and my slopers and stuff. And there was 2 other girls with me, and we went to 3 classes in a row, and they were all about fitting the bust. And each one had an entirely different philosophy, an entirely different teaching pattern, and an entirely different answer to this. So by the time we finished all 3 classes, all 3 of us looked at each other and went and ripped up our notes. Does that mean any of them were bad? No. They just were so different. One was high bust, one was low bust, one was full bust. You left there thinking, I guess it just doesn't matter. So it's really what you're comfortable with and how good you are at altering patterns. I used to always say, if you only rely on the high bust pattern and you're a double D, you got a lot of movement in there. Movement that way, I should say, of what you have to alter. So it's really your preference, but I don't agree with just taking that measurement, and that's the reason why. So there are so many ways to alter a pattern. If it's draping on a dress form, if it's fitting on yourself, basically measuring your measurements compared to the exact pattern is probably the best way to do that. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But I know that they do, a lot of teachers actually recommend that, and that's why I don't. Oh, I love Connie Crawford too. She's awesome. She was I met her and went to a few fashion shows with her. We were part of IPCA. And oh gosh, her husband's awesome too. So nice people. I really like them a lot. Okay. It changes through time. Oh, here's Carla. It changes through time, as I used to have a little waist and hips and big bust. Now my waist is much bigger, but my hips are not so big. And my bust is still large as always. Hey, well, that's a bonus, Carla. Usually some people pay for that, so put the feather in your cap on that one. But doing manual labor made my back larger, so it's really difficult to make your clothes. Carla, that's a really good question as well. Well, first off, we all change in shape, unfortunately and fortunately, depending which way you go. But if you are muscular, like it sounds like you are with your back, that is difficult to fit. In fact, George has asked me a million times to do a pattern fitting, and George, I just remembered it now, and I'm going to write it down. Wide back, to show you how to do that adjustment. It's really not that difficult to do that, and you just basically have to look at each part of the pattern of where it is on your body. So if you're changing something to fit the back of you because you're more muscular, or maybe you stand broader now, or you're hunched over now, those are 2 big differences. You can alter just that part of the pattern. So let's just say, a lot of times, I'm leaning like this because a lot of times through time, the ladies that I would alter their clothes, they'd have a little hump right behind their neck. We would do that, and when I altered that part of their pattern, then I actually didn't have to alter anything else. So that was just one pattern alteration. So if you have one part, like a bicep or something like that, then you can alter the bicep to be bigger or smaller and leave the rest of the pattern alone. So that's one little tip for you. Although it changes all the time, and it really depends on the style of the garment. But that is such a common problem as well. I really appreciate you guys sharing all of these on here as far as these fitting problems, because you're going to find out you have like at least 100 friends here on the live show that's probably saying, oh my gosh, I have that same one. And so when I do the live Q&A for this, depending on how many comments you leave, we might do quite a few Q&As and focus on just one fitting thing at a time. I think it'll be beneficial, and for those of you that have the problem, well, we can fix it. Plus, we have a few laughs in there too. We could call Cody and ask him his thoughts. I'm sure that he will tell us what his thoughts are. So, before we run out of time, I want to take you to the cover stitch. And I have to have some little liquids because it's dry in here. And some of you asked me, I am not an ambassador for this company. I just drink this all the time. I got so many emails from you guys saying that you ordered it and you love it. I'm telling you. Maybe they need to call me and tell me that I should do that. But no, I'm not a brand ambassador. I just like it. Okay, here's some yellow fabric. So what have I been working on in the studio? A lot. I have 2 blogs rolling out and 3 videos I'm working on. So I can't really give you more details until next week when they go up. But I have been playing with sergers, cover stitch, double cover stitch, because it's National Serging Month. So regardless of what cover stitch machine you have, it could be the cheapest one out there, like, well, I don't know if it's the cheapest, but I have that cover stitch back there that I bought on Amazon. That's a very, very inexpensive one. It still has a chain stitch. So what on earth would you use a chain stitch for? Well, let me just grab my little pliers here. Oh, I saw somebody ask. Yes, this is a version of my Rachel. Yes, and speaking of this fabric, I'm going to call it the Green Leopard. It's going up on the website later today. No, tomorrow morning. I think I have it scheduled for. I have 6 yards left. I've already made 3 tops. I can't make any more because it's going to look like I'm wearing the same top all the time. It's a little see-through. I'll have Wynn bring me that bolt over here while I'm getting this ready. All right, so let me bring you back down here to the cover stitch. Here you go. I'm going to take out the left needle with my glasses on. Oh, thanks, Wynn. Okay, wait, squirrel for a minute. Okay, so Wynn says hi. Are you in there? He always loves hearing your comments later. This is the fabric, so you can see that it's a little bit see-through. It has a whole print. It's really good if you have green or blue eyes. It matches great. And it has a little bit of stretch. It's really, really, really soft. So it has a little bit of stretch. And I don't know. Like I said, I have 3 tops, and I have this much of a bolt left. So however much that is going up on the site tomorrow. And I will just mark it with a discount for you so you don't have to worry about a code. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Okay, so back to the cover stitch. The first thing I'm going to do is bring you down here. Just give me like a little smiley face or something so you can see this okay. I can never tell like exactly where you're looking now, but what I'm going to do is take out my left needle. And, all right, let's bring this over here just a little bit more. Turn on my daylight so I can see. Okay. Oh my gosh, I love this thing. And take out my right needle. So my 2 needles are out. Now this is really important. After you, I love all the smiley faces. Thanks, guys. Those are the Cody laughs. Okay, I always tighten my screw back up. There we go. And the reason being is because this machine can vibrate while you're sewing on it, and you don't want those screws to fall out. So the chain stitch, you can see I already have a chain pulled off here. I was really smart and tested the stitch before I started this time. And now I can know the laughs are going to come through because you know what happens if I don't. So I have this setting. So what you have is you have your center needle. See if you can go up here just a sec. Center needle and your looper. That's it. And just stitch. And it stitches just like a regular sewing machine. You can go fast, you can do whatever you want. I have taken, this is the top cover stitch machine, and I've taken all of the extra apparatuses off of here for that. I don't need them. So what you have here is the back side looks like, see how it's like a chain? You've seen that probably on the inside of your jeans, the inside of ready to wear. We were laughing about it in the group on Friday because if you pull one of these and pull, it'll like you can take this whole thing out. I'll show you in just a second. When you're finished with your cover stitch, all you have to do is chain off. Don't pull that, just chain off. So that's what you have. And I'll show you. My friend Michelle, she's an educator brother. She said she uses this to make her muslins for, you know, clothes to see if they fit or not. Because if you snip this and you get this in just the right spot, of course, let's see if I can get the right side. I can never remember if it's this side or the other side. I guess we're going to find out here, aren't we? Oh, it's the right one. Okay, so it's the side that you finished with. If you grab this and you pull, which I'm going to look up here and ask you, how many times has this happened to your pants where you have a hole, and if you keep pulling that, it all disappears? Well, this is it. If you keep pulling, it comes right out. So if you're fitting a muslin and you're finished and you want to take it apart and turn it into a pattern, you just erased everything you just did. That is your 10-second chain stitch lesson. Yeah, I know, isn't that cool? So you have that on your cover stitch, even if you have a cheap cover stitch machine. I had it on, let's see, what was the first machine that I used? The Viking 964 or something like that. I could never get it to work because I don't know why, but I couldn't. But then when I bought my second Viking, it worked on that one. So I think maybe there was something wrong with the first one. So if for some reason you have this and it doesn't work, check your machine, maybe get it serviced, things like that. But that is super easy. So it's the middle needle and the looper. That's it. I will go back and check your questions on that. And I can see a whole pile of questions rolling through here. Oh, goodness. Hey, Jude, you're still up. Where to use a chain stitch? That is a great idea. Well, you could use it to sew your seams because it's a really good secure seam. For those of you that have the baby lock that has like seven spools of thread, maybe 8, you can actually do the chain stitch and finish the edge at the same time. If you just have the chain stitch by itself, you can use it to sew a seam. You can use it for decorative stitching. That's a huge one. In fact, I was just doing a decorative stitch. Well, I can't show you yet because it's in a blog coming out next week. But I will show you next week. Where you can use the backside with the chain as a decorative stitch. If you're sewing a stretchy fabric, that chain can stretch just a little bit. That's a good stitch. How about, here's one for you. Of course, I'm not wearing that neckline. How about the neckline on the ruche tee? If you have a t-shirt that you just made, or you just want to, you know how sometimes you want to stitch the seam allowance to the top? So it's like your seam allowance is tucked in, and you just want to stitch along that. The chain stitch is great for that because it stretches. Where else? Anybody else have any ideas for that? In ready-to-wear, that's how they sew pretty much every seam. That's why the pants sometimes will have, like, if you see that little, it starts pulling, you're like, ah! I know in golf shirts and golf pants, because when I used to alter those for people, those were always, they'd say, we have a hole. Can't figure out how the hole got here. If you do alterations, that is the easiest fix, and they have no idea what happened. So all you have to do is backstitch over where it started to pull out and stitch down. Here's another one for those of you that do alterations for a business. If somebody needs their pants taken in or out, and it has that chain, it is so easy. Just leave the seam sewn the way it came with that chain stitch, and then either take the seam in or take the seam out, wherever, whatever you're altering. And then when you're finished, take that, just put a hole in it where you have to, you know, like where I showed you how to cut that thread, and just whoop, and you're gone. Yeah. Very easy. Okay. So before we run out of time, I want to show you this book review. And, oh, Jude, you never used it. Well, almost everything you sew, you could use it on. Although sometimes when you're using the sewing machine, it's just as fast. But for knits and things like that, it's really cool. All right, so put a dab of nail polish to stop the unzipping of the chain. You could do that, Sandy, but you don't really want nail polish on your garments. So if it's for a garment, I wouldn't suggest that. You could use spray check, but you know that's that stuff in the little bottle. I don't have any around here. But the fray check you also have to test, because I have seen, I don't know if mine was a little old or whatever, where you put a dab of it and it was just too much and it made like a spot on the fabric. So I prefer not to put chemicals on the fabric like that, just as safety precautions. You should, if you chain off, not have to worry about that happening. Usually what happens when the chain stitch breaks is that it wasn't chained off far enough, or the fabric pulled too much and it popped one of the back stitches, or maybe it got snagged on one of your piece of jewelry or whatever. All right, so because we had to start our video over, you don't have the link to this book. So as soon as the video's over, I will repost this link to this book because this book is so old. But I found it in my stash, and I thought you might like it. So let me just get my stuff out of the way here. Here you go. This is, is that too bright, or is that good enough light? I can't tell. Good enough. Is that, that's like a candy bar, isn't it, Win? Okay, so this book is so old, and I went through this, and I have it highlighted. It's very old. The garments are even older. I should say that's older, out of style maybe, but they were gorgeous, like very, very couture. Like some of the things on here I would never, ever wear in my whole life, but there's little tips, like this bias trim here. These ruffles. Now, would I wear that? Heck no, but I might have worn it way back then. But the whole idea here is this book is couture. So there's tips in here. I kind of skipped past the history section, so let me just show you what I've highlighted. There's a whole section in here on, okay, so the book is called Couture, The Art of Fine Sewing. I added it to my Amazon influencer page, and I also will leave a link here for it in case you want to see it. I would also suggest not doing this one on Kindle because there's way too much stuff that you could highlight, which I love. So, okay, you've seen me do this before, cutting my sleeve on the bias. It shows you which way to lay out the sleeve. I love that. Because you would think, okay, well, I could just lay the sleeves both going this way. Well, you can't. They have to go like this for them to line up like this. That's just one small tip here. They have a whole section here on bias. Here's the skirt on the bias. It tells you, how to adjust your seam allowances for cutting on the bias, a whole bunch of things like that. Just a lot of tips that I think when I logged in to look at this book on Amazon, it said that I had purchased this in 2008. Now, I'm going to go back up here for a second. 2008 was not that long ago. So I thought, I know that Wynn carried this book for me in 1995 and 1996 or someplace in that area, and I highlighted to death. That's why I see all the highlights, because this is all from like, oh gosh, when did you carry? Well, you're still carrying my books. But there was a period of time where he would carry all these books. He'd never say a word. I'd carry him to the boat, and he'd fish, and I'd read, and I'd highlight, and I'd study and study and study. Remember, I didn't go to college for this. I went for business and engineering, so this was not. So I had to learn how to do this couture stuff. So anyways, this book, I saw the highlights, and I said, okay, I purchased this. So anyways, I found an extra copy. So I have another one to highlight again. Okay, so tell me that I'm not the only one that highlights my books. Tell me that you highlight, because if I'm the only one that does this, we're in trouble. If you ever see my books in the store, because I sell them, they're going to be highlighted from top to bottom. All right, there was a lot of tips here on bias necklines. Yeah. Oh, good. I see a whole bunch of fingers, thumbs going up. I'm not the only one. Yay. Oh. Wynn just told me it's 3 o'clock. I'm like, oh no, I have to be somewhere at 3 o'clock. Here's one. Okay, I love Chanel jackets. Double piping. Okay, this section I loved. Jude, this book would be for you. Oh, by the way, Jude, and for all of my friends in foreign countries, well, not foreign, just different outside the U.S., I have new codes now for you as well. And sometimes they give me special discounts, so for Amazon, which is very cool. So this is double piping, and that's very old-fashioned. But you can see how some of these fashion trends are coming back, or they're being used in different places. Okay, look at this section. I love cuffs, and that's gorgeous. That looks like that's on the bias. I love buttons. So I just have a few more pages to show you. I don't want to be a spoiler and show the whole book. Gathering. That's a big one, which, by the way, gathering can be done with a serger. And if you're in my serging class, give me a thumbs up and tell me that you've tried this. You can adjust the differential feed and use a special foot on your serger and gather fabric. It's so cool. Yeah. I know. And so I'll make separate pieces of fabric. I'll bring some of the pillows next week. They're in that room, because they're not allowed on the bed. So I put them all here at the office. And I know you're laughing because somebody in my class the other day said, where do you put all your pillows if you're not allowed to have them on the bed? Well, they're all here. That's okay, though. Okay, so 2 more things on this book. Check out these buttonholes. Those are cool. That was a big thing for me. I thought these are really cool. They're easy to do. I do a ton of covered buttonholes, covered buttons, and buttonholes. There's some more gathering, all different kinds. Some of it's done by hand, some of it's done with a machine. And for those of you that are really into pattern design, things like that, there you go. It shows you how to take a regular pattern, turn it into a princess, lines, and there's a lot of pattern details on here. This is a big couture tip. See how this sleeve looks right here? This is how all of my blouses, when I make a blouse, or anything in the sleeve factor looks like. And the reason being is because that's this part of your arm. And when your elbow is automatically going to bend, so I'll bring you back up here because we're finished with this now. This part of your arm, when it bends, imagine it's like that, it's going to need to be a little bit extra fabric in the back than the front. So you add that little curve, and so then it's longer in the front than the back. So when you're sitting here normal, your cuff looks fine, but you just gave yourself a little bit more room in that elbow area. That's just one of the couture tips that I learned from this book. So again, I will leave you a link for this. And what I was saying is, I think I have now Canada, the UK, Germany, Italy, and 2 others where I can give you links to certain things on Amazon if I'm looking for something. So if you're trying to find something special that I'm using, and just send me a note and tell me what country you're in, and I have all of that saved now. It doesn't show up on my influencer page because that's just for USA, but all of these have different codes, and I can find it for you very quickly, which is very cool. So anyways, our show is just about finished, and someone asked me last week, you didn't have a contest. Well, I totally forgot, actually, last week. And this week, I'm not having a contest because I'm working on a project, and we will have a contest for next week. So anyways, I think I gave you enough tips, though. That was your tip for the week. And I so appreciate your patience last week. That video was awful. It was so pixelated. So I popped into the group as a fun, and that was pretty cool. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through your questions. So if you're not live, be sure to leave a question. I'm going to go back, and we're going to have a Q&A sometime tomorrow. I'm taping videos all day tomorrow, and I'm just going to take a quick break. It's going to be off the cuff. You don't have to be live for it. You can always watch these again and again. And for those of you that are not on Facebook watching this, this is also being shown in the group and on both my websites, angelawolf.com, angelawolfpatterns.com, and the replay will be up on YouTube. It didn't go live on YouTube this time because I was worried that that's why it was pixelated viewing both of those, but I'm just trying to hit you wherever you are, and I know a lot of you said you didn't want to be on Facebook anymore, so that's okay. I'm still here with you. So, all right, I see a whole bunch more questions coming through. Thank you. Ask your questions. Karen, I see you. I do too. Oh, wait. So all of you, that's a ton of you before I hang up. So those of you that have to run. I'm just going to answer some questions. It's great seeing you, but I'm not leaving yet because I see so many of you said that you highlight. I'm the highlighting queen. In fact, when I got the Dream Machine, I might have mentioned to you that I highlighted. I had Post-it notes. I mean, it looked like Wynn came home and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm reading the manual," and you could just see him go, "Have you ever done that before?" No, but that machine had so much stuff, and I thought, well, I read it from cover to cover, and I found six misspelled words, but that's okay. All right, Susan, I see a question from you. Is this the same book you discussed last week? Oh, no, the book I discussed last week, hold on, is this one. Okay. I love this chair. It's like a little king chair. So tall. All right, so this is the book from last week, and this is on my Facebook, or on my Amazon page too. The Tunic Bible. That's right, you probably didn't even see that because it was so pixelated. This is the one from last week, And this one, I'll just show you a few photos on this just as a recap since it was so pixelated. This was a great book. It's a newer version. I also would suggest buying the paper version. They signed it for me. I love that. Julie and Sarah, you're awesome. So this gives a lot of tips for decorating your garment, anything like that, and it comes with a pattern. So you've probably seen these two girls on Instagram, and many of you said you loved their blog, things like that. They're just so cute and creative. Here's another one. I mean, I would buy any of those fabrics. So this is the book I talked about last week, the Tunic Bible. I can leave you a link to that too in the here, or it's on my influencer page. So it was all saved in the description before our first video went bad today. You just never know. But I'll put a link there. So thanks for asking, Susan. That was definitely it. And maybe what I'll do is start a little section on my blog where it's just the book reviews, so you can go back and check these out. Because I have so many books to review that I think that we could do this every day for probably, how long, Win? 5 years? He's laughing. Hey, Win, the ladies gave you an A+ last week for painting the living room and dusting the piano. He's laughing. Someday I'll tell you all the story about the piano. It was a gift from Win many years ago. So, yeah. They're all giving you thumbs up. All right, so a link to the influencer page. Steph, I will post that here. It's I don't want to go off this page so I don't lose you, but I will post a link. And I will post a link to both those books too. I added some more things in there. I found, what did I find this week? I found some of the applique scissors that we used. Was it last week or the week before? I found, oh gosh, I was on a mission for some pressing items, besides the clapper, of course. I don't know, I put a few more things in there. I think all you have to do, you can scroll through there, and every once in a while I remove stuff. So the Minky fabric, I found a few really cool colors, like that teal, which is gorgeous for spring. I love that. Okay. Oh, thanks, Darlene. She tells me to have a great day. You love this. And I'll just skip a few more, but then I have to run because I have to be somewhere at 3. It was so fun hanging out with you all today. I'm so glad we finally got a good video. It wasn't pixelated. It wasn't anything like that. Oh, you probably have a copy of some of your same books. Karen, you probably do, because I'm telling you, well, many of these, okay, let's just see. The year of this book, The Couture, The Art of Fine Sewing by Roberta Carr, was written in, and this will tell me, yes, the second printing was 1994. The first printing was 1993. When you definitely carried that book in 1995, 1996. That was pre-internet. Okay, can you believe it that in 1996 we didn't have internet yet? If we did, I didn't know how to use it. I didn't even think, my first computer I didn't even buy until 2003 or 4 or something like that. Yeah. Old school, Nelly. No wonder I have so much problems with my videos. All right, you guys, I will see you tomorrow for a live Q&A. Leave your questions, even if you're not live. I will come back, I will copy them, and tomorrow I will go over them live again. I can't tell you what time because I don't know what time. It's going to be in between the videos. It's going to be impromptu, and I'm just going to jump in, and hopefully you'll be around. I will, there is a way. Okay, so if you're on my mailing list, here's a little tip for you. If you're on my mailing list, I haven't sent out a newsletter in like 3 weeks, so you haven't missed anything. If you're on my mailing list, you can adjust your settings where it says that you want to know about Facebook Live. If you do that, I will make sure an email goes out 1 hour before I go live, and that way you'll know. Because I know some of you are diehards and you love to join, and I love it when you do. So that will give you a little help in case it doesn't show up on your Facebook feed. And if I know what time I'm going live, I'll post it in the group about an hour in advance, just so you know. All right? Will that help? I don't want you to miss out. All right, you guys, I hope you had a great week. Oh, I will talk about it next week, but we'll talk about all those desserts. For those of you that are looking for good recipes, go, even though the video was awful last week, go through the comments under episode 73. Holy cow. I have enough to make for the next 2 months. Yeah, and even stuff that Win will eat. So thank you for those. All right, bye, you guys. Have a great week. And I think we're done for the day. If there's anything you want to see next week, let me know. All right, bye.